I am Amanda Reed, 30, and literally last weekend, my rep as the project management star? Yeah, it totally backfired. The career I'd worked my butt off to keep solid? It blew up into a full-on betrayal at my own wedding. Tate Lawson, my boss's smug son, straight up demanded I play along with his shady games, and when I clapped back, the room went dead silent. "You're done, Amanda," he texted, with my bridesmaid staring like deer in headlights. But here's the tea. His shade didn't break me. It lit a spark. I'm not just pushing back. I'm about to flip the script and change everything. Drop a comment telling me where you're watching from, hit subscribe, and stay with me for the most satisfying revenge you'll ever hear. Looking back, it's almost unreal what I'll do once that text hits my phone. The morning of my wedding, I stood in front of the mirror, my white dress hugging my frame, the lace itching slightly against my skin. My hands trembled as I adjusted my veil, not from nerves about marrying Daniel, but from a gnawing feeling I couldn't shake. I'd been up late the night before, triple-checking project timelines for a major client deliverable due Monday. My phone buzzed incessantly on the vanity, each ping a reminder of the chaos I'd left at work. As lead project manager at Lawson & Sons, I'd spent 5 years turning their sloppy operations into a well-oiled machine. Deadlines met, budgets slashed, clients singing our praises, all because I'd poured my soul into it. But Tate, he was the thorn in my side, the boss's son who coasted on nepotism, botching deals and blaming me when they fell apart. I glanced at my phone, expecting a last-minute work email. Instead, a single text from Tate glowed on the screen. "You're fired. Effective immediately. Good luck." My stomach dropped. I read it again, the words blurring as my pulse hammered in my ears. Fired? On my wedding day? My fingers hovered over the keyboard, itching to fire back, but my best friend Claire burst into the room, her laughter cutting through my shock. "Amanda, you're not sneaking work on your big day," she teased, snatching the phone. I forced a smile, tucking the hurt away. I wouldn't let Tate ruin this moment. The ceremony was a blur, vows, Daniel's warm hands in mine, the crowd's applause, but as we swayed to our first dance, his brow furrowed. "You okay, Mandy?" he whispered. I nodded, but my jaw clenched, the text burning in my mind. I didn't tell him yet, I couldn't. The reception carried on, guests clinking glasses, my parents beaming, yet every laugh felt hollow, Tate's words looping like a cruel soundtrack. I slipped away to the balcony, gripping the railing, the cool night air stinging my cheeks. That's when Daniel found me, his tie loosened, concern etched on his face. "Talk to me," he said softly. I showed him the text. His eyes darkened, not with surprise but with something heavier. "There's something you need to know about Tate," he said, his voice low. My heart skipped. Daniel worked in compliance, auditing Lawson & Sons contracts. If he had dirt, it was big. "Not now," I whispered, glancing at the party. "Tomorrow." But as we rejoined the guests, my spark of defiance grew. Tate thought he'd broken me. He had no idea what was coming. That night, lying beside Daniel in our hotel suite, I stared at the ceiling, my wedding band glinting in the moonlight. Fired via text. On my wedding day. The audacity was almost laughable, but the sting was real. I'd given everything to that company. Late nights, skipped vacations, ideas that saved them millions. And Tate, with his slick hair and fake charm, thought he could erase me with a single message? No. I wasn't just going to survive this. I was going to build something better, something mine. The spark was now aflame, and I could feel it warming my resolve. Tomorrow, I'd hear Daniel's secret. Tomorrow, I'd start fighting back. As I lay there in the dim light of the hotel room, Daniel's steady breathing beside me, my mind refused to quiet. The text from Tate kept replaying, each word a sharp jab that pulled me back through the years I'd wasted at Lawson & Sons. I closed my eyes, and suddenly I was back in the office conference room, 3 years ago, during the annual performance review meeting, the one that still burned like acid in my gut. It was supposed to be my moment, the culmination of months of grinding through the biggest project we'd ever landed, but as always, it turned into another showcase for Tate's unearned glory. The room was stuffy, the air thick with the scent of stale coffee and printery. I sat at the long oak table, my notebook open in front of me, pages filled with meticulously highlighted metrics, client retention up 40%, costs down 25%, all thanks to the streamlined processes I'd implemented single-handedly. My fingers drummed lightly on the edge of the table, a nervous habit I couldn't shake. as Mr. Lawson, Tate's father and the CEO, shuffled through his stack of papers. He was a burly man in his 60s, with a perpetual squint that made him look perpetually disappointed. Tate lounged across from me, his chair tilted back, legs crossed, fiddling with his phone under the table. I caught a glimpse of him scrolling through social media, his thumbs swiping lazily, while the rest of the team, 5 other managers, shifted uncomfortably in their seats. "All right, let's get to it," Mr. Lawson grumbled, clearing his throat. He started with the others, dishing out rote praises and minor critiques. When he got to me, I straightened up, my heart picking up pace. "Amanda," he said, glancing at my report without really reading it. "Solid work on the Henderson account. Deadlines met as usual." That was it. No mention of how I'd negotiated the contract extension that saved us from losing the client entirely, or the late nights I'd spent reworking the team's botched deliverables. My lips parted to add something, but he was already moving on. "Now Tate, son, you've really stepped up this quarter." Tate set his phone down with a soft click, leaning forward with that practiced grin, his teeth too white against his tanned skin. "Thanks, Dad. The team's been killing it." He didn't even look at me as he said it, his eyes flicking to the window instead, where rain pattered against the glass. Mr. Lawson beamed, launching into a monologue about Tate's innovative ideas on the very project I'd salvaged. Ideas? Tate had contributed nothing but delays, missing meetings because of golf outings with potential clients, which were really just excuses to schmooze on company dime. I'd covered for him, rewriting his half-baked proposals, my eyes burning from screen glare at 2 a.m. while he partied. Yet here was Mr. Lawson slapping Tate on the back, announcing a bonus for him that was double mine. I felt heat rise in my cheeks, my fists clenching under the table, nails digging into my palms until they left crescent marks. The other managers avoided my gaze, one coughing awkwardly into his sleeve, another tracing patterns on his notepad with a pen. I wanted to speak up, to list out every hour I'd logged, every crisis I'd averted. "Actually," I started, my voice steadier than I felt, "the Henderson turnaround was mostly due to the new tracking system I developed. It caught the budget overruns early." Tate's eyes finally met mine, narrowing slightly, his jaw tightening for a split second before he chuckled. "Team effort, Amanda. No need to hog the spotlight." Mr. Lawson nodded absently. Right, good point. Moving on." The dismissal hit like a slap. I stared at my notebook, the words blurring as frustration welled up, hot and bitter. Why did I keep swallowing it? Because I loved the work. The puzzle of aligning teams has the thrill of hitting impossible targets. But that day, as the meeting dragged on, Tate soaking up accolades for my sweat, something inside me cracked a little more. He leaned back again, whispering to the guy next to him, both snickering softly. I caught fragments. "Overachiever needs to chill." My throat tightened and I forced myself to breathe, counting the ticks of the wall clock to steady my pulse. By the end, as everyone filed out, Mr. Lawson paused at the door, turning to Tate. "Proud of you, kid. Keep it up." Tate clapped him on the shoulder, their laughter echoing down the hall. I lingered, stacking my papers slowly, each shuffle a deliberate delay to compose myself. Alone in the room, I pressed my forehead against the cool table, tears pricking my eyes, not from sadness but rage. I joined Lawson & Sons fresh out of grad school, full of ambition, turning down better offers because I believed in their family-oriented culture. Family? It was a dynasty for the Lawsons, and I was just the hired help, invisible unless something went wrong. That review wasn't isolated, it was the pattern. Flashbacks flickered, the holiday party where Tate got a toast for leading a deal I'd closed, while I stood in the corner nursing a flat soda, my smile pasted on. Or the client lunch, where he interrupted my presentation, stealing credit mid-sentence, his hand waving dismissively, as if my words were footnotes. Each time I'd grit my teeth, clench my jaw until it ached, and push forward, thinking dedication would eventually pay off. But it never did. Tate's incompetence, lost files, unethical shortcuts like fudging reports to inflate numbers, was glossed over because of his last name. I'd fixed his messes quietly, my hands trembling with exhaustion as I reworked data late into the night, the office lights buzzing overhead. Lying in that hotel bed now, the memory fueled the flame in my chest. Daniel stirred beside me, murmuring in his sleep. I turned to watch him, his face peaceful, and wondered what secrets he held about Tate. The overlooked years had built a reservoir of resentment but also resilience. Tate's text wasn't the end, it was the catalyst. I'd been invisible too long. No more. The first light of dawn filtered through the hotel curtains, casting a soft glow over the rumpled sheets. Daniel's eyes fluttered open, meeting mine almost immediately, as if he'd sensed my restlessness all night. I hadn't slept much, my mind a whirlwind of those overlooked years at Lawson & Sons, Tate's smug face superimposed over every memory. Daniel propped himself up on one elbow, his hair tousled, concern deepening the lines around his eyes. "Couldn't sleep?" he asked, his voice rough with sleep. I shook my head, pulling the covers tighter around me, the fabric cool against my skin. He reached out, his fingers brushing my arm lightly, sending a small shiver through me. Not from cold, but from the weight of what I knew was coming. We'd planned a lazy honeymoon morning, room service breakfast, maybe a walk on the beach, but Tate's text had shattered that illusion. I handed Daniel my phone again, the screen still open to the message, my thumb hovering over it like I could somehow delete the reality. "Tell me everything," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. He sighed, sitting up fully now, the mattress dipping under his weight. His hand ran through his hair, a habitual gesture when he was gathering his thoughts, strands falling back into place unevenly. "I've been auditing Lawson & Sons for months," he began, his tone measured like he was delivering a report. "Their contracts, finances, it's all part of my firm's routine compliance checks. But Tate, he's been cutting corners in ways that could tank the whole company." My breath caught, and I shifted closer, our knees touching under the covers. The room felt smaller suddenly, the distant hum of the air conditioner the only sound besides his words. Daniel's eyes flicked to the window, where the ocean sparkled innocently beyond, before locking back on mine. It started small. Inflated expense reports, sure, but then I found discrepancies in the client bids. He's been undercutting competitors by promising deliverables they can't meet, using falsified projections. He paused, his jaw clenching, a muscle twitching there as he chose his next words. I watched his Adam's apple bob as he swallowed, the vulnerability in that small motion making my chest tighten. Daniel wasn't one for drama. He dealt in facts, spreadsheets, black and white ethics. For him to hesitate meant it was bad. "Give me specifics," I pressed, my fingers twisting the edge of the sheet, the cotton bunching in my grip. He nodded, reaching for his own phone on the nightstand, his arm brushing mine. The screen lit up his face as he pulled up encrypted files, notes he'd kept hidden, even from me, to avoid contact. "Look at this," he said, tilting the device toward me. Rows of numbers scrolled by, but he zoomed in on emails. Tate's name jumped out, bolded in the sender line. He's been backdating approvals, forging signatures on compliance forms. One deal with Apex Industries? He promised eco-friendly sourcing, but the suppliers are anything but. If regulators catch wind, fines could run into millions. And Amanda. His voice dropped, his free hand covering mine warm and steady. "He's pinned half of it on you, altered logs to show you signed off on the changes." The words landed like a punch, knocking the air from my lungs. I pulled my hand back instinctively, my nails digging into my palm as I processed. Me? The one who'd fought every unethical shortcut, staying late to ensure everything was above board? My vision blurred for a second, hot tears threatening, but I blinked them away, focusing on Daniel's face instead. His brows furrowed, regret flashing in his eyes. "I didn't tell you sooner because I was building evidence. Thought I could expose it internally, protect you, but after that text..." He trailed off, his shoulders slumping slightly, the weight of his secret visible in the way he avoided my gaze now, staring at his phone screen. I stood up abruptly, the floor cold under my bare feet as I paced to the window, my robe slipping off one shoulder. The ocean waves crashed below, indifferent to my turmoil. "How long?" I asked, my voice cracking despite my effort to keep it even. Daniel set his phone down with a soft thud, standing to join me, his reflection appearing beside mine in the glass. "At least a year. Maybe more. He's been siphoning funds too. Personal expenses billed as business. Golf trips, luxury cars. His dad's blind to it, or choosing not to see." His hand rested on my back, tentative at first, then firmer when I didn't pull away. I leaned into him, the solidity of his chest grounding me as rage bubbled up, mixing with the betrayal. "Why me?" I whispered, turning to face him, our faces inches apart. His breath was warm on my skin, minty from the toothpaste we'd shared last night. Because you're the threat, competent, ethical. He knows you'd never go along with it. Daniel's eyes searched mine, a flicker of pride cutting through the worry. I've got copies of everything. Emails, altered files, enough to bury him if it comes to that. My mind raced, piecing it together. The late-night calls Tate took in hushed tones, the confidential meetings I was excluded from, the way he'd hover over my shoulder during reports, his fingers tapping impatiently on my desk. It all clicked now, the puzzle I'd been too buried in work to solve. I sank onto the edge of the bed, my legs suddenly weak, the mattress creaking under me. Daniel sat beside me, his thigh pressing against mine, a silent anchor. "What do we do?" I asked, my voice small. He took a deep breath, his chest rising and falling. "We don't rush, but you could use this. Start fresh, build your own thing. Something honest." His words echoed my earlier resolve, fanning that inner flame. I nodded slowly, my fingers interlacing with his, squeezing tight. The revelation hurt, a deep ache in my core, but it also clarified everything. Tate wasn't just incompetent, he was corrupt. And I was done being his scapegoat. As the morning sun climbed higher, we ordered breakfast. Coffee steaming in mugs, toast crumbling under my fingers as I absently picked at it. Daniel talked me through more details, his voice low and steady, pointing out timestamps on documents, his finger tracing lines on the screen. Each piece fueled my determination, turning shock into strategy. By the time the tray was cleared, my tears had dried, replaced by a steely focus. Tate had fired me to cover his tracks, but he'd handed me the key to his downfall. I wouldn't seek revenge outright, not yet. I'd build better, on integrity he could never touch. The honeymoon stretched ahead, but my mind was already mapping a new path, one where I called the shots. The plane touched down with a gentle thud, jolting me from my half-sleep, the engines whining down as we taxied along the runway. Daniel squeezed my hand, his thumb tracing small circles on my knuckles, a silent reassurance amid the chatter of disembarking passengers. We'd flown to a secluded resort in the Caribbean, the kind with white sands and turquoise waters that promised escape. But as we stepped into the humid air, the salty breeze whipping my hair, escape felt impossible. Tate's betrayal and Daniel's revelations clung to me like the sticky heat, and my mind was already churning with plans for my consulting firm, something I'd toyed with in whispers before, but now it felt urgent, a lifeline on the brink of a massive shift. We checked into our villa, the porter wheeling our luggage with a cheerful whistle, his uniform crisp against the lush greenery outside. The space was open and airy, wooden beams arching overhead, a private plunge pool shimmering beyond sliding glass doors. Daniel flopped onto the king-size bed, arms outstretched, grinning up at me. "No work talk for at least 24 hours, he teased, but his eyes held a knowing glint, aware that my brain never fully switched off. I managed a laugh, dropping my bag with a soft thump and joining him, our bodies sinking into the plush comforter. Yet as I lay there, staring at the ceiling fan's lazy spin, the ideas flooded in unbidden. A firm built on integrity, no nepotism, no shortcuts, just solid project management for clients who'd been burned by firms like Lawson & Sons. By late afternoon, the sun hung low, painting the room in golden hues. Daniel suggested a swim, but I waved him off, my fingers already itching for my laptop. "Just a quick note," I said, pulling it from my bag, the zipper's rasp echoing in the quiet. He sighed, planting a kiss on my forehead, his lips warm and lingering. Before heading out, towel slung over his shoulder. Alone, I settled at the small desk by the window, the wooden chair creaking under me. The view was idyllic, palm fronds swaying, waves lapping gently. But my focus narrowed to the screen, fingers hovering over the keys before diving in. I started with a business name, Reed Consulting. Simple mine, no sharing credit with a Lawson. As I typed, outlining services, my heart raced, a mix of excitement and dread knotting in my stomach. This was the edge. No safety net, no steady paycheck. What if it failed? I paused, chewing my lower lip, the metallic taste of blood faint as I bit too hard. Daniel's files on Tate flashed in my mind, those forged signatures, the ethical breaches. I couldn't go back, not to that toxicity. Pushing forward, I sketched a website wireframe in a notebook, pencil scratching rapidly, circles and arrows linking pages, about me, highlighting my track record, services emphasizing ethical practices, contact with a form that screamed reliability. My free hand drummed on the desk, nails tapping a rhythmic beat, syncing with my quickening pulse. The planning deepened, pulling me in. I researched domain names on my phone, screen brightness turned up against the fading light, squinting as options popped up. Readconsulting.com, available. I snatched it, credit card details entered with trembling fingers, the confirmation email pinging like a victory bell. But doubt crept in, my shoulders tensing, a dull ache spreading from hunching over. What about funding? Savings would cover basics, but marketing? Clients? I leaned back, chair tilting with a groan, rubbing my temples where a headache bloomed. Daniel's voice echoed in my head. Build something honest. Yes. I'd target mid-sized firms tired of corporate BS offering transparent project oversight. I dove into a competitor analysis next, tabs multiplying on my browser, sleek sites with testimonials I knew were half-faked. My mouse clicked furiously, scrolling through case studies, noting what to emulate and avoid. A breeze slipped through the open door, carrying the scent of salt and hibiscus, but I barely noticed, my eyes stinging from the glare. This firm would be my redemption, proof that integrity wins. I jotted financial projections, pen pressing hard enough to indent the paper. Startup costs low, first client within months. Optimistic, maybe. But the fire from Tate's text fueled me, my jaw clenching at the memory. Daniel returned as dusk fell, water dripping from his hair, pooling on the tile floor. He paused in the doorway, towel around his neck, watching me with a tilted head. Planning already? He asked, voice soft but amused. I looked up, blinking to refocus, the room's shadows lengthening. Couldn't help it, I admitted, closing the laptop with a click, the warmth from its base seeping through my lap. He crossed the room, his bare feet padding softly, and knelt beside me, hands on my knees. Tell me, he said, eyes searching mine, droplets tracing down his chest. I exhaled, leaning forward, our foreheads nearly touching. It's happening. Reed Consulting, ethical, efficient, everything Lawson isn't. My voice gained strength, hands gesturing animatedly, knocking a pen to the floor with a clatter. He smiled, genuine and proud, his fingers intertwining with mine. What's the first step? We talked then, voices low as night enveloped the villa. I described the logo ideas, clean lines, no frills, sketching roughly on a napkin, crumbs from an uneaten snack scattering. He nodded, suggesting tweaks, his input steadying my nerves. But as we spoke, a major opportunity loomed in my mind. A former client, disillusioned with Lawson, had hinted at jumping ship. If I pitched right, it could be my launch deal. Life-changing revenue, validation. The conversation stretched, Daniel fetching drinks from the mini fridge, glasses clinking as he set them down. I sipped mine, the cool fizz bubbling on my tongue, but my mind raced ahead. This brink felt exhilarating yet terrifying, like standing on a cliff's edge. Tate's fraud was my secret weapon. If needed, I'd use it discreetly to sway clients. Daniel's hand on my arm grounded me, his touch light but firm. You're ready, he murmured, belief in his tone easing the knot in my chest. By the time we moved to the balcony, stars twinkling above, the plan solidified. Tomorrow, more details, but tonight this realization hit. I was on the verge, teetering toward triumph. The return flight home dragged on, the airplane's hum a constant backdrop to my swirling thoughts. But as we landed and drove back to our apartment, the reality of what awaited hit me like a wave. Honeymoon over, plans for Reed Consulting sketched out in my mind, but first I had to tie up loose ends at Lawson & Sons. Collect my things, handle the formal exit, face the aftermath of Tate's impulsive text. Daniel dropped me off at the office building that Monday morning, his car idling at the curb, engine purring softly. He leaned over, his hand cupping my cheek, thumb brushing my skin in a gentle arc. You don't have to do this today, he murmured, eyes searching mine for any sign of retreat. I shook my head, unbuckling my seatbelt with a click that echoed my resolve. Better to rip the Band-Aid off, I replied, forcing a smile that didn't reach my eyes. Stepping out, the pavement warm under my heels, I straightened my blazer, fingers smoothing the fabric as if armor against what was coming. The lobby felt colder than I remembered, the marble floors reflecting the fluorescent lights overhead, my footsteps clicking sharply as I swiped my badge, surprisingly still active, at the turnstile. The security guard nodded absently, his gaze flicking back to his newspaper, pages rustling. Elevator doors slid open with a ding, and I stepped in, alone, the mirrored walls throwing back my reflection, composed on the surface, but my hands clasped tight in front of me, knuckles whitening. As it ascended, my stomach twisted, a knot tightening with each floor passed. What would they say? Would Tate gloat? The doors parted on the 12th floor, and the familiar scent of coffee and copier toner hit me, stirring a mix of nostalgia and nausea. I headed straight to my desk, cubicle walls looming like sentinels, my colleagues' voices murmuring in low tones from nearby. Heads turned as I passed, Sarah from accounting pausing mid-keystroke, her fingers hovering over her keyboard, Mike in sales averting his eyes, suddenly absorbed in his screen, mouse clicking rapidly. Whispers followed, soft but unmistakable like wind through leaves. Did you hear? Fired on her wedding day. I ignored them, chin lifted, but my jaw clenched, teeth grinding subtly. Reaching my workspace, I froze. Boxes already stacked, my belongings haphazardly tossed in, photo frames cracked at the edges, files spilling out. Someone had packed for me. Impersonal and rushed. My hand trembled as I picked up a framed picture of Daniel and me, glass cool under my fingertips, a small chip now marring the corner. Before I could process, footsteps approached, sharp, deliberate. Tate rounded the corner, his suit impeccably tailored, tie knotted perfectly, but his eyes held that familiar smug glint, lips curling into a half-smile. He stopped a few feet away, arms crossed, one foot tapping idly on the carpet. "Amanda," he drawled, voice laced with feigned surprise. "Didn't expect you to show, thought the text was clear." I set the frame down carefully, the thud louder than intended, and met his gaze, my pulse thumping in my ears. "Clear? On my wedding day? Classy, Tate." My words came out even, but inside anger simmered, my fists balling at my sides, nails pressing into palms. He chuckled, a low mocking sound, leaning against the cubicle wall, fabric rustling. "Business doesn't wait for personal drama. You were becoming a liability, questioning every decision, slowing us down." "Liability?" I bit back a retort, watching his micro-movements, the way his eyes darted to my packed boxes, a flicker of satisfaction, his fingers drumming on his elbow, impatient. Colleagues peeked over partitions, pretending to work, pens scratching, keyboards clacking, but their attention was palpable, the air thick with tension. "I've saved this company millions," I said, voice rising slightly despite my effort, stepping closer, the space between us shrinking. "While you, what, golfed away deals?" His smile faltered for a split second, jaw tightening, a vein pulsing in his neck. Tate straightened, uncrossing his arms, hands slipping into his pockets, keys jingling faintly. "Watch it, Dad's already signed off. HR's waiting, severance papers, NDA, sign and go quietly." He gestured dismissively toward the conference room down the hall, his wave casual but commanding. I followed his gaze, spotting the glass walls where shadows moved inside. Mr. Lawson silhouetted, pacing slowly, phone to his ear. The indifference stung deepest. No one intervening, no acknowledgement of my years. Sarah whispered to Mike, their heads close, eyes avoiding mine. I grabbed a box, hefting it, the cardboard edges digging into my arms, a physical bite mirroring the emotional one. As we walked to HR, Tate beside me, his cologne overpowering in the confined hallway, he kept talking, voice low and taunting. "You think you're irreplaceable? We've got interns handling your load already." Each word jabbed, but I focused on my breathing, in through nose, out through mouth, the rhythm steadying me. At the door he paused, hand on the knob, twisting it slowly. "Good luck out there, Amanda," consulting's cutthroat. His smirk returned, eyes narrowing as he pushed the door open, gesturing me in first. Inside, the HR rep, Linda, with her tight bun and clipped tone, sat at the table, papers spread out, pen tapping rhythmically. Mr. Lawson glanced up from his call, nodding curtly, no warmth in his expression, just a quick avert of eyes back to his screen. I sat, chair scraping against the floor, box thumping beside me. Linda slid the documents over, her nails manicured and red, contrasting the bland forms. "Standard severance, 2 weeks pay, benefits end Friday, sign here." Her voice was neutral, eyes on the papers, not me. I scanned the pages, words blurring, non-compete clauses, gag orders on internal matters. My pen hovered, cap clicked off with my thumb, the sound sharp. Tate lingered by the door, watching, his foot still tapping. The company's indifference wrapped around me like a fog, no questions about my side, no thanks for the overhauls I'd led. Mr. Lawson ended his call, phone clattering down, and cleared his throat. "Amanda, it's business. Nothing personal." "Nothing personal?" My grip tightened on the pen, ink bleeding slightly as I pressed too hard. I signed, each stroke deliberate, the scratch of nib on paper the only sound. Handing it back, I stood, chair pushing back with a screech. Tate's smugness radiated, his posture relaxed, but I caught the subtle shift, his avoidance of direct eye contact now, focusing on his shoes. "That's it?" I asked, voice calm but edged. Linda nodded, stacking papers neatly, shuffle crisp. As I left, box in arms, Tate followed a step behind, his presence like a shadow. In the hall, he muttered, "Don't burn bridges." I didn't respond, my strides lengthening, heels clicking faster. The elevator waited, doors open, and as they closed on his face, that smug dismissal etched in my mind, fueling the fire for Reed Consulting. The descent felt like shedding weight, each floor a step toward freedom. The elevator doors slid shut with a soft whoosh, sealing me in solitude as the car began its descent, the floor numbers ticking down like a countdown to my unraveling. My arms ached from holding the box of belongings, the cardboard edges cutting into my skin, but it was nothing compared to the raw burn in my chest. I'd signed the papers, accepted the paltry severance, and walked out of that HR room with my head high. But as the elevator hummed, doubt crept in. Had I really just let them discard me like that? No fight, no final words? The mirrored walls reflected my flushed face, eyes bright with unshed tears, and I shifted the box to one hip, freeing a hand to wipe at my cheek, the motion quick and furtive. The descent seemed endless. Each floor a reminder of the layers I'd built here, now stripped away. When the doors finally opened to the lobby, the bustle hit me. Phones ringing at the reception desk, visitors milling about, their conversations a low buzz. I stepped out, heels echoing on the marble, aiming for the exit, but my phone vibrated in my pocket, insistent and sharp. Fishing it out, the screen lit up with an email notification. Subject, Team Update, Organizational Changes. My thumb hovered, a tremor running through it before I tapped open. Sent from Tate, CC'd to the entire company. My stomach lurched as I read the first line. Effective immediately, Amanda Reed is no longer with Lawson & Sons. The words blurred, but I forced my eyes to focus, scrolling slowly as people passed by, oblivious, their briefcases swinging. Tate's message was a masterclass in corporate cruelty, phrased with false regret. After careful consideration, we've decided to part ways with Amanda to align with our evolving strategic goals. Her contributions over the years have been noted, but we're excited to move forward with fresh talent. Noted? That was it? No specifics on the projects I'd salvaged, the crises averted. My free hand clenched around the phone, knuckles whitening, the plastic case creaking under pressure. He went on to announce my replacement, an intern I'd trained, promoted overnight, and ended with a call for unity and focus during this transition. The email signature loomed at the bottom, his title bold, Vice President of Operations. Vice President? When had that happened? My breath came shallow, chest tightening as if squeezed by an invisible fist. I leaned against a lobby pillar, the cool stone pressing into my back, steadying me as the world tilted. Around me, the lobby continued its rhythm, the receptionist typing rapidly, keys clacking, a courier dropping off packages with a thud. But my mind zeroed in on the humiliation unfolding in real time. Notifications pinged, replies pouring in already? I refreshed, watching the thread grow. Colleagues I'd mentored chimed in, "Best wishes, Amanda," from Sarah, her words clipped, no warmth. Mike added a generic "thanks for everything," his avoidance from earlier now digitized. No one questioned it, no one defended me. The box slipped slightly in my grip, and I hoisted it higher, papers rustling inside like accusatory whispers. Then came Tate's follow-up, popping up as I stared. To ensure a smooth handover, join the all-hands meeting in Conference Room A at 11 a.m. It was 10:55. My pulse spiked. Was this the public spectacle? I shouldn't go. I was out, free. But my feet moved anyway, drawn by a masochistic need to witness the cut. Back into the elevator, this time crowded with staff heading up, their chatter dying as they noticed me, eyes darting away, one woman fiddling with her badge, twisting it nervously. The air thickened, scented with coffee and tension, as we rose. At the 12th floor they filed out ahead, avoiding contact, shoulders hunched. The conference room was packed, standing room only, the long table surrounded by chairs filled with familiar faces, junior staff shifting uncomfortably, seniors checking watches. Tate stood at the head, projector screen behind him glowing with a slide, moving forward. He spotted me in the doorway, his eyes narrowing briefly before that smug smile returned, lips curling just enough to show teeth. "Amanda," he said loudly, voice booming through the room's speakers, "glad you could join for the send-off." Send-off? The word twisted like a knife. Heads turned, murmurs rippling, soft gasps, averted gazes. I stayed in the threshold, box balanced on my hip, refusing to sit, my chin lifted despite the heat flooding my face. Tate clicked the remote, slide advancing with a beep. "As many of you know from the email, Amanda's tenure ends today." He paused, scanning the room, his free hand gesturing expansively, fingers splayed. "She's been part of the team, but changes are necessary for growth." Lies layered in politeness. I watched his micro-ticks. The way he avoided my eyes, focusing on the back wall, his foot tapping under the table, shoe soles scuffing the carpet faintly. Mr. Lawson sat to his right, arms crossed, nodding absently, his fingers drumming on his biceps, a rare sign of discomfort, or indifference. The room's energy shifted, colleagues exchanging glances, one coughing into his fist, another scribbling non-existent notes. He dove deeper, projecting my achievements in bullet points, twisted versions, led Henderson project to completion, omitting how I'd fixed his errors. "But," he added, voice dropping conspiratorially, "we've identified areas for improvement, like adaptability to new directives." Adaptability? Code for refusing his fraud. My nails dug into the box, cardboard buckling slightly. A junior staffer, Emily, whom I'd coached through her first presentation, looked at me, eyes wide, then down at her lap, fingers twisting a ring. The humiliation peaked as Tate opened for questions. Silence stretched, thick and oppressive, until one voice, loyal to him, piped up, "Who's taking over her accounts?" Tate beamed, announcing the intern with flourish, the room erupting in polite applause, claps echoing like slaps. I couldn't breathe, the air stale, my throat closing. Tate's eyes finally met mine, triumphant, his jaw set firm. "Any last words, Amanda?" The invitation was a trap, his tone mocking, hand-waving the remote like a scepter. I straightened, voice steady despite the tremor in my core. "Just this. Integrity matters more than shortcuts." Whispers erupted, but I turned, box thumping against the doorframe as I left. Down the hall, footsteps hurried. Someone following? But no, just my echo. In the elevator again, doors closing, the final cut sank in, publicly disowned from my professional family, contributions erased, left to the wolves. Yet, as it descended, that flame ignited brighter. Reed Consulting would rise from this ash. The elevator doors parted with a ding that reverberated in my ears, spilling me back into the lobby where the world carried on untouched by my unraveling. My arms strained under the weight of the box, its contents shifting with each step, a photo frame clinking against a stapler like a mocking reminder of the life I'd just been ejected from. The marble floor stretched ahead, my heels clicking unevenly now, my composure cracking as the full weight of the all-hands meeting pressed down. Tate's voice echoed in my head. "Any last words?" His smirk burned into my vision, the room's polite applause a chorus of betrayal. Colleagues I'd trained, lunches shared, crises navigated together, all silent spectators to my public disowning. My throat tightened, a lump forming that I swallowed hard against, blinking rapidly to clear the sting in my eyes. The receptionist's phone rang shrilly behind me, but I kept moving, chin up, though my shoulders wanted to slump. Outside, the midday sun blinded me momentarily, heat rising from the pavement in waves that matched the nausea churning in my gut. I set the box down on a bench with a heavy thud, the wood creaking under it, and leaned against the building's brick wall, the rough texture scraping my blazer. Cars whooshed by on the street, horns blaring intermittently, pedestrians weaving past with purposeful strides, everyone else anchored in their routines, while mine lay in ruins. Fired, humiliated, erased in a single email and meeting. What now? Reed Consulting was just sketches on a honeymoon napkin, not real yet. Doubt flooded in, cold and insidious. Was I delusional, thinking I could start over? My hands trembled as I pulled out my phone, screen smudged from sweaty fingers, intending to call Daniel for a pickup. But before I could dial, it vibrated in my palm, an unknown number flashing. Area code familiar, one of our biggest clients, Apex Industries. I hesitated, thumb hovering over the green icon, my breath shallow. Ignore it? But curiosity or desperation won. I swiped to answer, pressing the phone to my ear, the device warm against my skin. "Amanda Reed," I said, voice steadier than I felt, though it cracked slightly on the last syllable. On the other end, a pause, then a deep, gravelly voice. Amanda, this is Greg Harlan from Apex. Glad I caught you. Your office line went straight to voicemail. Greg, the VP who'd championed the eco-sourcing deal Tate had botched. My free hand gripped the bench's armrest, wood splintering faintly under my nails. Greg, hi, I'm actually not at the office right now. Understatement of the year. A car horn blared nearby and I stepped further into the shade, palm fronds from a decorative tree rustling overhead. He chuckled, oblivious, the sound warm but businesslike. No worries. Listen, I've been trying to reach Tate about the latest projections, but he's dodging me. And honestly, after the last fiasco, I'm not thrilled with Lawson & Sons' direction. My heart skipped, pulse quickening as I straightened. The wall's bricks now a brace rather than a crutch. Fiasco. Tate's falsified reports, the ones Daniel had uncovered. I didn't interrupt, letting him continue, his words tumbling out with growing frustration. Your work on the turnaround was the only solid part. The rest? Smoke and mirrors. We're pulling the contract unless things change. Pulling? Apex was 30% of Lawson's revenue. My mind raced, connecting dots. This call, at this exact moment, felt like fate intervening. I paced a small circle on the sidewalk, phone cord tangling slightly in my hair as I tucked a strand behind my ear. Greg, I appreciate the candor, but I'm no longer with Lawson. The admission stung anew, but saying it aloud sparked something. Opportunity? He went silent for a beat then. What? Since when? I exhaled, leaning against the bench now, the metal arm cool under my forearm. Effective today, creative differences, let's say. He huffed, a mix of surprise and intrigue. Well, damn, that explains the radio silence. Amanda, level with me. Were you the one keeping that ship afloat? His directness caught me off guard, and I glanced around, ensuring no Lawson stragglers lurked. A passerby bumped my shoulder lightly, muttering an apology, but I barely registered it. Yes, I admitted, voice gaining strength, my free hand gesturing as if he could see. The processes, the fixes, that was me. Tate's ideas often needed refining. Understatement, but professional. Greg's tone shifted, eager now. Knew it. Look, we're in crisis mode here. Need someone reliable for a new initiative. Ethical sourcing audits, tight deadlines. If you're freelancing. Freelancing? My breath caught, the world narrowing to his words. This was it, the budding success Daniel and I had dreamed of during honeymoon whispers. I'm starting my own firm, I said, the words tumbling out, my pace quickening again, heels scraping pavement. Reed Consulting, focused on integrity-driven project management. He paused, papers shuffling on his end, a pen clicking. Perfect, send me a proposal, timeline, rates, make it competitive. If it checks out, we'll bypass Lawson entirely. My knees weakened, and I sat abruptly on the bench, the wood groaning. Competitive? This could be my launch client, validating everything. I'll have it to you by end of day, I promised, mind already outlining, services bullet-pointed, my track record highlighted, like subtle nods to ethical practices without outright slamming Tate. Greg agreed, his voice warmer. Great, and Amanda, between us I've heard rumors about Lawson's shortcuts. Glad you're out. Rumors? Daniel's audit leaking? I didn't probe, just thanked him, my fingers tightening around the phone as we wrapped up. Hanging up, I stared at the screen, call duration blinking. 8 minutes. 8 minutes that unveiled the true scale of what I could build. Laughter bubbled up unexpectedly, startling a nearby pigeon that fluttered away, wings flapping. Tears pricked again, but these were different. Relief, triumph mixing with the residue of humiliation. The box sat beside me, a relic of the past, while my future pulsed in my palm. I texted Daniel, pick me up, big news. As I waited, the sun's glare softened by passing clouds. I pulled out my notebook from the box, pages crinkling, and jotted notes for the proposal. Micro details. Emphasize cost savings from my methods. Reference Apex's pain points. My pen flew, ink smudging slightly from haste. Daniel's car pulled up minutes later, tires crunching gravel, and he leaned over to open the door, concern etching his brow. What happened? I slid in, box on my lap, seatbelt clicking into place. As we drove off, I recounted the call, words spilling, my hands animated, knocking the dashboard lightly. His eyes widened, a grin spreading, his hand reaching for mine at a stoplight, fingers interlacing. This is it, he said, squeezing. The call had changed everything. At my lowest, it revealed my worth not to Lawson but to the world beyond. Reed Consulting wasn't a dream, it was dawning. The drive home blurred by in a haze of traffic lights and honking horns. Daniel's hand steady on the wheel, his occasional glances my way filled with quiet support. But inside, the high from Greg's call battled the fresh wounds from the all-hands meeting, Tate's voice still ringing in my ears like a persistent echo. We pulled into our driveway, the garage door rumbling open, and as I lugged the box inside, its weight seemed heavier, laden with the remnants of a chapter I was desperate to close. Daniel followed, his keys jingling as he tossed them on the counter, the metallic clatter breaking the silence. "You okay?" he asked, voice soft, arms wrapping around me from behind, chin resting on my shoulder. I leaned back into him, the warmth of his chest seeping through my blazer, but tension coiled in my muscles, refusing to unwind. "Better now," I murmured, though the lie tasted bitter. The apex proposal loomed. A beacon, but first I needed to confront the hypocrisy head-on, expose Tate's fraud to the board, not for revenge, but to walk away clean. By evening, we'd settled at the kitchen table, laptops open, the scent of takeout Chinese lingering from half-eaten cartons, forks scraping plates intermittently. Daniel pulled up his audit files again, screen glowing blue in the dim light, his fingers scrolling through documents with practiced ease. "The board meets tomorrow," he said, eyes flicking to mine. "Anonymous tip or direct?" I pushed my carton away, rice grains scattering, and rubbed my temples, the ache from the day's stress pulsing there. Direct, it had to be. Tate's scramble when the truth hit, that's what would give me closure. I drafted an email, keys clacking under my fingers, each word deliberate. Subject, urgent, ethical violations at Lawson & Sons. Attachments. Daniel's compiled evidence, screenshots of forged signatures, email chains with backdated approvals, expense logs bloated with personal indulgences. My cursor hovered over send, heart hammering, a bead of sweat tracing down my back despite the AC's hum. Sleep came fitfully that night, dreams fragmented. Tate's smirk morphing into board members in different faces, my voice echoing unheard. Morning brought resolve. I dressed sharply, crisp blouse, slacks pressed, heels that clicked with authority as I paced the living room, practicing my pitch mentally. Daniel drove me back to the office, radio off, the silence pregnant with anticipation. "You've got this," he said at the curb, hand squeezing mine, fingers interlacing briefly before releasing. I nodded, stepping out, the box long gone, replaced by a slim folder of printed evidence tucked under my arm, paper edges sharp against my skin. The lobby greeted me like an old foe, the same guard nodding, but his eyes lingered longer, perhaps sensing the shift. Elevator up, doors opening to the 12th floor, where the buzz felt subdued, whispers hushed as I passed, colleagues' heads ducking behind monitors, mouse clicks frantic. I headed straight for the boardroom unannounced, my knocks on the glass door firm, knuckles rapping twice. Inside, the board sat around the polished table, Mr. Lawson at the head, gray hair disheveled, tie loosened, 3 others, suits rumpled, coffee mugs steaming. Tate stood by the window, phone in hand, his back to me until the door swung open with a whoosh. He turned, eyes widening fractionally, phone slipping slightly in his grip before he caught it. "Amanda?" Mr. Lawson rose halfway, chair scraping back, his brow furrowing in confusion. "What are you doing here?" The others shifted, papers rustling, one adjusting his glasses with a trembling hand. Tate recovered quickly, stepping forward, arms crossing defensively, sleeves bunching at the elbows. "Security," he muttered into his phone, but I held up the folder, the motion halting him mid-dial, his thumb freezing over the screen. "Before you call them," I said, voice calm, though my pulse thundered, "hear this, I've sent evidence to each of you, proof of Tate's fraud." The room stilled, the AC's vent humming the only sound, cool air brushing my neck like a chill warning. Mr. Lawson's face paled, sinking back into his chair with a creak, hand reaching for his laptop, fingers fumbling the lid open. The others followed suit, screens flickering to life, clicks echoing as they opened the email. Tate's composure cracked, his jaw clenched, a muscle twitching visibly, eyes darting to his father, then to me, narrowing with barely veiled panic. "This is slander," he spat, voice rising, hand slamming the windowsill lightly, the thud muffled, but his bluff rang hollow. Sweat beaded on his forehead, a drop tracing down his temple as he paced a tight circle, shoes scuffing the carpet. I laid the folder on the table, pages fanning out slightly, each one a damning exhibit. Altered logs with my forged signature circled in red ink, expense reports highlighted, golf clubs billed as client entertainment, luxury trips masked as business development. Tate's been forging documents, siphoning funds, I explained, pointing to specifics, my finger steady despite the inner tremor. He pinned it on me to cover his tracks, that's why the firing, on my wedding day no less. Mr. Lawson scrolled, face ashen, his free hand rubbing his chin, stubble rasping under his fingers. One board member, Ellen, gasped softly, hand covering her mouth, eyes wide behind her glasses. Another, Tom, leaned forward, squinting at the screen, his chair tilting with a groan. Tate scrambled now, words tumbling out, his hands gesturing wildly, palms up in feigned innocence. Dad, she's lying. Disgruntled ex-employee. Check the timestamps, it's fabricated. But his voice wavered, pitch higher, and he avoided eye contact, staring at the floor where a coffee stain marred the carpet. Mr. Lawson looked up, eyes meeting Tate's, a flicker of doubt crossing his features for the first time. Brows knitting, mouth tightening into a thin line. Son? He asked, voice low, laden with disappointment. Tate faltered, stepping back, bumping the window ledge, blinds rattling softly. I stood tall, exposing the hypocrisy layer by layer. You've ignored my contributions for years, projects I led, successes you credited to him. But this? Ethical breaches that could destroy the company. Regulators, lawsuits, it's all here. Ellen nodded slowly, her pen tapping the table rhythmically, a sign of agreement I'd seen in past meetings. Tom cleared his throat, voice gruff. This looks bad, Tate. Explain. Tate's scramble intensified. He rounded on me, finger jabbing the air inches from my face, breath hot. You were always jealous, Amanda, undermining me. But his accusation fell flat. The board's eyes were on the evidence, not him. Mr. Lawson stood finally, hands flat on the table, veins bulging as he pressed down. Amanda, if this holds... He trailed off, glancing at Tate, who now slumped against the wall, arms hanging limp, defeat etching his posture. Please followed, subtle at first. We can work this out, Mr. Lawson said, voice coaxing, stepping closer, his cologne faint and familiar. Come back, help fix it, promotion even. Tate joined, desperate now, his earlier smugness evaporated, voice pleading. Yeah, misunderstanding, let's talk compensation. Their scramble was almost pitiful, eyes pleading, hands gesturing for reconciliation. But I rejected it calmly, shaking my head, a small smile tugging my lips, not triumphant but liberated. No, I'm building my own firm, ethical, successful. You can face this without me. I gathered the folder, papers whispering as I stacked them, the finality in the motion clear. Tate's face crumpled, a mix of rage and fear, his fists clenching at his sides, knuckles white. Mr. Lawson reached out, hand hovering, then dropping. Amanda. But I turned, door handle cool under my palm, twisting it open. The powerful exit came as I walked out, head high, the board's stunned silence following me down the hall. Whispers starting anew. But this time, not at my expense. Elevator doors closed on their world, and as it descended, freedom washed over me, the exposure complete, hypocrisy laid bare. The boardroom door clicked shut behind me with a finality that echoed down the empty hallway, my footsteps steady now, no longer burdened by the weight of unspoken truths. The elevator descended smoothly, the soft hum a stark contrast to the chaos I'd just unleashed. And as I stepped into the lobby, the world outside beckoned, sunlight streaming through glass doors, cars gliding by on the street below. My phone buzzed in my pocket, a gentle vibration that pulled me back to the present. It was Greg from Apex, following up on the proposal I'd set last night, his text simple. Looks promising, call to discuss? I smiled faintly, thumb swiping to reply, the screen's glow reflecting in my eyes. But first home, where Daniel waited, and where the seeds of my new life had already taken root. The contrast hit me then, sharp and vivid, the toxic dismissal from Lawson & Sons versus the genuine embrace of those who'd chosen to stand by me. Daniel greeted me at the door, his arms open wide, pulling me into a hug that smelled of fresh coffee and home, his chin resting atop my head for a moment. How'd it go? He asked, voice muffled against my hair, hands rubbing slow circles on my back. I pulled back slightly, meeting his eyes, warm, unwavering, and recounted the board's stunned faces, Tate's desperate scramble, like the way Mr. Lawson's hand had trembled as he scrolled through the evidence. Daniel's jaw tightened at the details, a flicker of anger crossing his features, but it softened into pride as I finished. You did it, he said, squeezing my shoulders, fingers firm yet gentle. We moved to the kitchen, where he'd set out lunch, sandwiches on the counter, bread still warm from the toaster, plates clinking as he served. But eating could wait. Excitement bubbled up, and I paced the tiled floor, heels tapping a rhythmic beat. That evening we hosted a small gathering. Not a party, but a milestone moment with the handful of allies who'd become my chosen network. Claire, my best friend from college who'd freelanced in marketing, arrived first, her knock brisk, arms laden with a bottle of wine and a stack of printed mock-ups for Reed Consulting's logo. "Babe, you slayed that exposure," she said, hugging me tightly, her perfume floral and comforting, before setting everything down with a thud on the dining table. Next came Alex, a former colleague who'd quit Lawson months ago after clashing with Tate. He slipped in quietly, handshake firm, his backpack slung over one shoulder containing resumes of potential hires he'd vetted. "Heard about the board blow-up already. Whispers are flying," he confided, eyes twinkling with shared satisfaction, as he unpacked laptops, cords tangling briefly before he straightened them. The living room filled gradually, the air warming with laughter and the clink of glasses, red wine swirling in stems, bubbles fizzing in soda for those abstaining. Daniel played host, passing appetizers on a tray, his free hand occasionally brushing my arm in passing, a silent anchor. We gathered around the coffee table, cushions sinking under our weight, laptops open to shared docs where the Apex proposal gleamed. Timelines color-coded, budgets neatly tabulated. Greg had called earlier, his voice enthusiastic over speakerphone as we'd hashed details. My fingers had drummed the table then, nerves mixing with thrill, but now, with this group, it felt solidified. "To Reed Consulting," Daniel toasted, raising his glass, the liquid catching the lamplight. We clinked, the sounds harmonious, faces alight with genuine smiles. Not the forced politeness of Lawson meetings, but real, earned camaraderie. Claire leaned forward, her bracelet jangling softly as she pointed to the screen. "This branding, clean, ethical vibe, it'll pop against Lawson's sleaze." She adjusted her glasses, pushing them up her nose with one finger, her enthusiasm infectious. Alex nodded, scrolling through client leads, mouse clicking steadily. "I've got 2 more ex-Lawson folks interested in jumping ship. They saw your exit email, boom, inquiries pouring in." His words landed warmly, contrasting the cold indifference I'd faced yesterday. Here, my achievements weren't overlooked, but celebrated, hands gesturing animatedly as ideas flowed. I sat back, legs crossed, ankle twitching slightly with residual energy, absorbing the shift. No backhanded compliments, no credit stolen, just support, freely given. As the night deepened, conversation turned personal, stories shared over refilled glasses, laughter erupting when Claire mimicked Tate's smug drawl, her face contorting comically, hands waving in exaggeration. "And then he says, 'Team effort!'" We doubled over, my sides aching from the release, tears of mirth pricking my eyes. Daniel caught my gaze across the room, his smile soft, a nod that said everything. This was the antidote to the toxicity. Alex shared his own Lawson horror, a botched project Tate had blamed on him, his voice steady but edged with old hurt, fists clenching briefly on his knees before relaxing. "You gave me the courage to leave," he admitted, eyes meeting mine, no avoidance, just honesty. The room quieted for a beat, the weight of shared experiences hanging, then lifted with Claire's quip, "Chosen family over bloodsuckers any day." We brainstormed late, papers scattering across the table, sketches of office layouts, post-its stuck haphazardly with contact names. My pen scratched notes, ink flowing smoothly, each word a brick in this new foundation. Daniel's hand found my knee under the table, thumb tracing lazy patterns, grounding me amid the buzz. The contrast sharpened. At Lawson, dinners were obligatory, laced with condescension, eyes rolling behind backs. Here, time flew, no one checking watches, bonds forged in authenticity. As guests trickled out, hugs lingering, promises to follow up, Claire paused at the door, hand on the knob. "This is just the start, Amanda. We're in it with you." Her words wrapped around me like a blanket, warm against the chill of past betrayals. Alone with Daniel, clearing glasses, their clinks echoing in the quiet kitchen, I reflected aloud, suds bubbling on my hands as I washed. They chose to be here, no obligations, no games. He dried a plate, towel swishing, and pulled me close, foreheads touching. "That's the difference. Real allies lift you." His breath was steady, reassuring, and in that moment the toxic echoes faded, replaced by this warmth. Reed Consulting wasn't solitary. It was bolstered by these chosen ones. their support a vivid counterpoint to the old world's venom. The night ended with us on the couch, legs entwined, planning tomorrow's pitches, the future bright and ours. The morning after our gathering with Claire, Alex, and the others, sunlight filtered through the kitchen blinds and slanted beams, casting warm patterns on the countertop where remnants of last night's brainstorming lingered, scattered post-its curling at the edges, a half-empty wine glass catching the light. Daniel was already up, brewing coffee, the machine gurgling softly as grounds steeped, the rich aroma filling the air and grounding me in this new rhythm. I stretched at the table, my back popping faintly from the couch's embrace, and reached for my phone, screen lighting up with notifications, emails from potential clients, a follow-up from Greg at Apex confirming our contract start date. But amid the positives, one message stood out. An email from Mr. Lawson himself, subject line opportunity for collaboration, sent late last night, timestamp glaring like an unwelcome intrusion. My finger hovered over it, a slight tremor in my hand before I tapped open, the words unfolding, a tentative outreach, hinting at mutual benefits post the boardroom revelations, requesting a call to discuss possibilities. Daniel noticed my furrowed brow as he set a mug down beside me, steam rising in lazy curls, his hand lingering on my shoulder, thumb pressing gently into the knot there. "What's that?" he asked, voice low, peering over. I tilted the screen toward him, our heads close, his breath warm on my cheek. "Lawson wants to talk, probably damage control after the evidence drop." My voice held an edge, jaw tightening as memories flashed. Tate's desperate pleas, the board's stunned silence. Daniel's fingers squeezed reassuringly before he pulled out a chair, wood scraping the tile, sitting across from me. "You don't owe them anything. But if you engage," he trailed off, eyes searching mine, knowing the temptation, to set terms, to fortify my boundaries on my turf. By mid-morning, curiosity and a strategic instinct won. I scheduled the call for noon, pacing the living room as the clock ticked, rug fibers soft under my bare feet, rehearsing responses mentally. No concessions, strict ethics clauses, Tate sidelined. Daniel worked nearby, laptop keys clacking sporadically, offering nods of encouragement. When the phone rang sharp and insistent, I answered on speaker, placing it on the coffee table, the device vibrating slightly against the wood. Mr. Lawson's voice crackled through, tentative at first, laced with a humility I'd never heard. "Amanda, thank you for taking my call," he began, clearing his throat audibly, cough muffled as if by his sleeve. "After yesterday, we've initiated an internal investigation. Tate's on leave, but the company's in flux, clients jumping, deadlines slipping." I sat on the couch, legs crossed, ankle twitching subtly with pent-up energy, leaning forward to respond. "I expected as much. The fraud runs deep." My tone was even, but firm, fingers drumming lightly on my knee, nails tapping a steady rhythm. He paused, papers shuffling on his end, perhaps reports or notes, the rustle faint but telling. "We need expertise to stabilize. Your firm, Reed Consulting, could consult on the Apex transition, oversee cleanup." Apex? The irony twisted in my gut. They'd lost the contract to me. Daniel's eyes met mine across the room, a subtle nod urging caution. "Why me?" I asked, voice probing, hand reaching for a notepad, pen clicking open with my thumb. Mr. Lawson sighed, the exhale heavy through the line as if deflating. "You're the best we had. Honest. We can offer competitive rates, quick payment." His words carried a plea, voice dropping lower, almost whispering the concessions. "But boundaries first," I interjected, pen scratching as I jotted key terms. "If, and that's a big if, we engage my rules. Full transparency, access to all records, no interference from Tate. Ethics training mandatory for your team, led by me, and payment up front, non-negotiable." Silence stretched, the line humming, then his reluctant agreement. "Understood, but Tate, he's family, maybe a junior role under supervision?" "Junior?" The word hung, and I pictured him, smug no more, perhaps fidgeting in his chair, awaiting the verdict. My grip tightened on the pen, ink bleeding slightly as I pressed harder. "No, he's the root. Exclude him entirely, or no deal." Daniel smiled faintly, pride flickering in his eyes, his foot tapping approval under the table. Mr. Lawson hesitated, chair creaking as he shifted, likely rubbing his chin in that habitual way, stubble rasping if he hadn't shaved. "Amanda, please. He's learned, suspended, therapy even." "Therapy?" A micro shift in his tone, desperation creeping, but I held firm, voice unwavering. "Not my problem. Boundaries mean protecting my firm from toxicity. Take it or leave it. The call teetered there, his breathing audible, labored, as decisions weighed. Finally, a defeated exhale. Agreed. No Tate. Send the contract. We'll sign. I ended the call with a tap, the screen darkening, and leaned back, couch cushions sighing under me. Daniel stood, crossing to sit beside me, arm draping over my shoulders, pulling me close. You set the fortress, he murmured, lips brushing my temple. But the aftermath lingered. My heart still raced, adrenaline fading into a quiet triumph, hands unclenching slowly, palms damp. This wasn't just business, it was reclaiming power, brick by brick. The email chain continued that afternoon, attachments flying, my drafted contract, clauses bolded, integrity audits, no nepotism policies, penalties for breaches. Mr. Lawson's replies came swift, signatures digital and binding. No pushback now, his tone subdued in follow-ups. As evening fell, shadows lengthening across the floor, I reviewed the signed docs, cursor scrolling smoothly, each page a barrier erected. Daniel cooked dinner, pots clanging softly, the sizzle of vegetables a comforting backdrop. Feels solid, I said aloud, closing the laptop with a click. He nodded, plating food, steam rising. Your rules, your engagement. We ate at the table, forks scraping, conversation light but laced with reflection, how this outreach tested my resolve. How enforcing boundaries healed old wounds. My foot brushed his under the table, a small connection grounding. No more open doors for betrayal. I'd built walls, high and unyielding, with gates I controlled. By bedtime, the day's events settled, a quiet satisfaction blooming. Lying beside Daniel, sheets cool against my skin, his breathing even, I stared at the ceiling, mind tracing the call's micro moments, Lawson's pauses, the shuffle of defeat. This fortress wasn't isolation, it was empowerment, ensuring future dealings honored my worth. Tomorrow, more clients, but tonight, peace in the boundaries I'd drawn, impenetrable mine. Weeks blurred into months as Reed Consulting took shape, the initial contracts with Apex and a few defectors from Lawson snowballing into a steady stream of clients drawn by word of mouth about our ethical edge. But it wasn't until that crisp autumn morning, nearly a year after my firing, that the true reclamation began, not just of my career, but of the legacy I'd built in an industry rife with shortcuts. I sat at my new office desk, a sleek wooden slab in our modest downtown space, fingers tracing the grain as I reviewed the latest proposal. The room hummed with quiet activity. Claire tapping away on branding updates, her keyboard clacking rhythmically. Alex fielding calls from potential hires, his voice low and steady through the partition. Daniel had stopped by for lunch, now lingering with a coffee mug in hand, steam curling up as he watched me with that familiar mix of pride and concern. My phone rang then, shattering the calm. An unknown number, but the area code screamed Lawson and Sons. I hesitated, thumb hovering over the screen, the vibration buzzing against my palm like a warning. Daniel raised an eyebrow, setting his mug down with a soft thunk on the coaster. Answer it? He suggested, leaning against the doorframe, arms crossed loosely. I nodded, swiping to accept, putting it on speaker so the team could hear, the transparency we'd baked into our culture from day one. Mr. Lawson's voice crackled through, strained and urgent, a far cry from the authoritative tone I'd known. Amanda, it's Harold Lawson. We need your help. Need? The word hung heavy, and I leaned back in my chair, the leather creaking under me, exchanging glances with Claire, who paused mid-type, her fingers frozen above the keys. He dove in without preamble, his words tumbling out, punctuated by shallow breaths, as if he'd rehearsed but couldn't stick to the script. The company's in crisis. That fraud you exposed, it's snowballed. Regulators are investigating, clients fleeing. Apex pulled out completely, citing ethical lapses, and now our flagship project, the one you spearheaded last year, is collapsing. Deadlines missed, budgets overrun, Tate's actions. They caught up. Tate, my jaw tightened at the name, a muscle twitching there, nails digging into the armrest subtly. I pictured him now, perhaps in some diminished role after his suspension, but Lawson continued, voice dropping lower. We've cleaned house, but we need oversight. Your firm, Reed Consulting, has the rep now. Ethical project management. We're willing to hire you to consult, oversee the turnaround. Full access, your terms. The offer landed like a thunderclap, the room stilling, Alex's call ending abruptly, his chair swiveling toward me with a faint squeak. This was it. The ultimate full-circle moment, using my success to not just survive, but to redefine the standards that had failed me. But it wasn't about revenge, it was impact, reclaiming the professional legacy Tate had tried to tarnish on my principles. I cleared my throat, voice measured. Why read? You have options. Lawson's pause was telling, a sigh escaping like air from a deflating tire, because you're the one who saw it coming. Your methods work. And Tate would be involved in a junior capacity. Learning from you. Junior? The irony twisted in my gut, but I caught Daniel's nod, subtle, approving. This could be the positive ripple, mentoring, enforcing integrity where it had been absent. We negotiated right there, my pen scratching notes on a legal pad, ink flowing as clauses formed, bi-weekly ethics audits, transparent reporting, Tate reporting directly to me with no authority. Lawson's agreements came swift, his tone laced with resignation. Yes, fine to each demand, his chair audible in the background creaking as he shifted uncomfortably. Claire jotted digital addendums, her mouse clicking to update our standard contract template. By call's end, he'd emailed preliminary docs, attachments pinging in my inbox, and we set a kickoff meeting for the next day. Hanging up, the phone thudded softly on the desk and the team erupted, Claire's whoop echoing, Alex's fist pumping subtly, Daniel's hand on my shoulder, squeezing warmly. This is huge, he said, eyes shining. But inside, a quiet resolve settled. I'd use this to create real change, not just fix their mess. The next morning, I arrived at Lawson & Sons early, portfolio under arm, the lobby unchanged yet foreign now. Marble floors gleaming, but my heels clicked with ownership, not deference. Security waved me through, badge unnecessary, their nods respectful. Up to the conference room, the elevator's hum familiar. But my reflection in the mirrors showed a woman transformed, posture straight, eyes sharp. The board awaited, Mr. Lawson at the head, looking grayer, tie askew, others fidgeting with pens, caps clicking nervously. Tate sat at the end, diminished, suit ill-fitting from stress, eyes downcast, fingers twisting a paperclip into shapes on the table. He glanced up as I entered, door swinging shut behind me, his face paling, jaw clenching briefly before he looked away, the paperclip snapping in his grip. I took the seat offered opposite Tate, setting my portfolio down with a deliberate thud, papers fanning slightly. Let's start, I said, voice commanding the room. We dove into the project review, slides projecting budgets in red ink, timelines fractured. My questions probed deep. Why was this approval backdated? Pointing to a line item, laser pointer dot steady on the screen, Lawson stammered explanations, his hands gesturing vaguely, while Tate shifted uncomfortably, chair scraping faintly. When his turn came to report, I directed him like a mentee. Tate, walk us through your role in the overrun. He hesitated, voice low, avoiding eye contact, his foot tapping under the table, a nervous tick I'd forgotten. I misjudged the supplier, he admitted, words halting, a flush creeping up his neck. This was the reclamation. Guiding, not gloating. I interjected teachings. Integrity means verifying sources up front, demonstrating with my own tools, laptop keys clacking as I pulled up ethical checklists from Reed's framework. The board nodded, one jotting notes, pen scratching eagerly. Tate's responses evolved, grudging at first, his answers clipped, but as I praised a correct insight, good catch on the variance, his posture eased slightly, shoulders relaxing, eyes meeting mine for fleeting seconds. Lunch break came, catered trays clinking as lids lifted, but I used it for one-on-one, pulling Tate aside in the hallway, voices low amid passing staff whispers. This isn't punishment, I said, hand gesturing to the project files. It's a chance to build better. He nodded stiffly, fists unclenching at his sides, a small admission slipping. I see that now. Afternoon sessions deepened the impact. Implementing Reed's standards, team training on fraud detection, my voice steady as I paced, marker squeaking on the whiteboard. Tate participated, raising a hand tentatively, his question genuine for once, no smirk. By day's end, the project roadmap reshaped, my legacy imprinted, not erased. Lawson shook my hand at the door, grip firm but grateful, his eyes weary. Thank you, Amanda, this saves us. Tate lingered, extending his own hand awkwardly, palms sweaty. I'll learn, he muttered, avoiding full eye contact, but the words held weight. Walking out, elevator descending, I felt the shift, positive impact radiating, my principles redefining their operations, reclaiming the Reed name as synonymous with integrity in the field. Back at my office, the team awaited, high fives exchanged, palms slapping, our success now a beacon, inspiring others to demand better. The conference room at Lawson & Sons felt smaller than I remembered, the air thick with the faint scent of stale coffee and whiteboard markers, as I stood at the head of the table wrapping up the final ethics training session of our consulting engagement. It had been months of oversight, Reed Consulting embedded in their operations, my team and I dissecting processes, implementing safeguards, and yes, placing Tate in that junior role where he'd shadowed me like a reluctant. But today marked the end. Project stabilized, handover complete, my legacy imprinted not as a victim, but as the architect of their revival. The board members shifted in their seats, chairs creaking softly under shifting weights, notebooks closing with rustles of paper as they absorbed my closing remarks. Mr. Lawson nodded slowly, his fingers interlaced on the table, knuckles whitening slightly, a tell of lingering discomfort, perhaps. Tate sat at the far end, his posture straighter than before, tie knotted neatly for once, but his eyes fixed on the notepad in front of him, pen hovering without writing, the cap chewed at the end from nervous habit. I clicked the remote one last time, the projector humming to a stop, screen fading to black with a soft whir. "That's it," I said, voice steady, echoing slightly in the quiet room. "You've got the tools now. Integrity isn't a checkbox, it's a daily choice." Heads bobbed in agreement, one board member, Ellen, offering a small smile, her glasses slipping down her nose as she pushed them back with a finger. But my focus drifted inward, the weight of the moment settling like a gentle fog. This wasn't just closure on a contract, it was the culmination of a year where betrayal had morphed into self-definition. As they filed out, handshakes exchanged, Mr. Lawson's grip firm but brief, his palm cool and dry. Tate lingered, standing awkwardly by his chair, fingers fiddling with the pen, clicking it open and closed in rhythmic snaps. He approached as the room emptied, door swinging shut behind the last person with a muffled thud, leaving us in a bubble of silence broken only by the distant hum of office chatter beyond the glass walls. "Amanda," he started, voice low, eyes finally meeting mine, not with the old smugness, but a flicker of something raw, vulnerable. His hand extended halfway, then dropped, settling instead on the back of a chair, knuckles grazing the leather. I waited, arms crossed loosely, my own fingers tapping subtly against my elbow, pulse steady but aware. Wanted to say thanks, for not just fixing the mess but showing me how. His words hung, Adam's apple bobbing as he swallowed, a faint flush creeping up his neck. No apology outright, that wasn't Tate, but this admission felt close, his shoulders slumping slightly, the weight of his actions visible in the lines etching his face prematurely. I nodded, uncrossing my arms, hands falling to my sides, fingers flexing to release tension I hadn't noticed building. "It wasn't for you, Tate. It was for the work, for proving principles win." But as I said it, a deeper realization stirred, bubbling up from the core where resentment had once festered. This journey, from that wedding day text, the overlooked years, the fraud's unveiling, hadn't been about external validation, not from Lawson, not even from my successes at Reed. It was internal, a quiet forging of worth that no firing or fraud could touch. Tate shifted his weight, foot scuffing the carpet faintly, and murmured, "I get that now. Changed everything for me." He turned to leave, door handle turning under his grip, the click echoing as he exited, leaving me alone with the empty room. I sank into a chair, the cushions sighing under me, and stared at the blank screen, reflections dancing in its gloss from the overhead lights. My mind wandered back, not in flashes but a slow unraveling, the tremble in my hands that wedding morning, phone screen glowing with Tate's text, the late nights at Lawson, fists clenched under the table during reviews, Daniel's revelations in the hotel, his hand covering mine, warm and steady. Each moment had chipped away at illusions, of loyalty from a company that saw me as disposable, of success measured by titles handed down. But here in this reclaimed space, the truth crystallized. My worth was never theirs to grant or revoke. It was mine, rooted in the integrity I'd clung to, the firm I'd built from ashes, the impact rippling outward. Tears pricked unexpectedly, hot and unbidden, one tracing down my cheek before I wiped it away with the back of my hand, the salt faint on my skin, not from pain but release, a profound peace settling like dawn after a storm. I thought of Reed Consulting, the team laughs echoing in our office, clients' grateful calls, the ethical framework we'd exported to others. It wasn't revenge that satisfied, it was this internal anchor, unshakable. Standing, I gathered my notes, papers whispering as I stacked them, the folder cool under my fingers. The realization deepened with each micro-action, zipping my bag, the rasp of the teeth meshing, stepping into the hallway, heels clicking on tile, elevator descending, floors ticking by like shed layers. Outside, the autumn air nipped at my skin, leaves crunching underfoot as I walked to my car, keys jingling in my pocket. Daniel waited at home, our life intertwined not by necessity, but choice, the ultimate validation. As I drove, windows cracked to let in the breeze, rustling my hair, peace enveloped me fully. No more chasing approval, I was enough, had always been. The sun dipped low, casting long shadows, and in that light everything aligned. My principles not just a foundation, but the triumph itself. The wind down hit me then, a gentle wave. This story wasn't unique, but universal. Have you ever been betrayed at work, fired, or overlooked when you gave your all? Drop your experiences in the comments below. Let's build a community of resilience. Reflect on your own journeys. Where have you found internal strength amid chaos? Share this if it sparks something in you. If my path from betrayal to self-validation resonated, please like, subscribe, and pass it on to someone navigating their own storm. Remind them that true worth shines from within, unbreakable and bright. You're not defined by others' failures, you're empowered by your own truths. Keep rising.